discussing the necessity for antidepressants, such as with the French Frankish gene, the context which, as it's commonly called in bondage among men, or alternately the East Angles or Saxon gene, Prozac, the resistive mutative to haze, as inversion of aggression, hence when hazed, they move around and strike, or alternately the Hip-Sang gene of Russia, the Native American peoples, India, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Indochina, and partial regions of China, but not typically Manchukuo, Korea, Japan, or Taiwan, somewhat controversially, hence the separation of peoples. Let's go through the stages of a male haze victim unmedicated. We have considering lesbians, that being a woman who does not prefer to mate with you, a male, or perhaps any male, given career focus at a particular time. If you consider a lesbian an able mate, you have just made the first decision indicating you have been hazed. Normative gestures of close proximity relations. You are now applying your career goals to others with touching, leaning, close faces, or insistence on matched posture with self. Then there is a homosexual contemplation of self. You wonder if you are attracted to the same sex by placing yourself in the simulacrum of gender roles, a dysfunction of women's culture when approached as a lesbian. Then there is homoerotic reorientation of values and predication. That means you have taken the basic stage roles of gender and rearranged them to make them more complex. This is always the same result: passive-aggressive behavior, silence, submission, obedience. What's called fair play actually a response to aggression to an individual lower down on this list. Compliance with a dictator, male, despotic. Gay rights support, an illusory concept more popular with women given lesbian status, however afforded to men who women therefore fear given the prior phase, considering lesbians to be able mates, particularly on lower, more gruesome versions of these lists here and their various outcroppings or demonstrations. Contemplation of transgender experimentation. This is not a transgender or crossdresser, but somebody seeking to lay with one, force the operation, or otherwise a fixation on scatological pornography or pornographic reference. That means you have developed a sporting or athletic style focused around your own bowels, such as using GHB, steroids, creatine, or lifting weights, so-called shredding or shaving, or both. The homosexual auspice of a woman's preference if she has failed her basic esprit of female hygiene. Now we have homosexuality. You are pairing with men in deliberate public displays to offend other men present. Bestiality. You are attempting to mate predominantly with cats with an insertion, or alternately with lesser animals such as mice or rabbits. Very rarely dogs, a poisoner, lower on this list, a serial killer in proper form. Staging self as hero through own devised means. This is a simple political trick, often mimicking in reverse a prior figure. However, you are posing as the figure's literal dictum of self to accuse others, such as saying "ja," the American Yiddish version of "ja," "ja" favored by Hitler in an impression of an American Jew, but you are calling someone Hitler in a false parody, actually a mimicry canard. Pederasty. You now rub, hold, and control others with threats of law or protocol or dictum. A Lazinger syndrome if you are a lawyer or therapist. Pandering to stalking and invasion of privacy, and also embezzling as chief of accounts held. You think you can control a business or a dormitory or housing complex or somebody's life by assisting or intervening, somehow in your mind helpful, however derogatorily damaging the other individual, especially if discussed or extorted prior, such as a drug intervention. Control-oriented murder. This one means you have to control others, and if you fail to do so, particularly by your own act, and inevitability as later stages move on, you commit an act of homicide and false claim of innocence. Often assisted with modern psychiatric text terms excusing you by placing these categories in the behavior of an appropriate, however, not factual disorder, such as sublimating, transference, or an accusation of either. Power-controlled incarceration on a mass scale. Now you're targeting an entire group with a rally or cry or cause to place them in a lower space of non-mobility due to your own shame at yourself or your culture having created them, such as ECT, mass incarcerations, criminal sweeps, etc. Playing with corpses. Now you want to control others, past or post-mortem, even stealing from morgues to frame for homicide given manslaughter dictum. Dreams of legacy through poor behavior as contemplation of own singularity. You have just gotten fucking terrifying. You smile before your whole country, and every single person, due to your nature and your guise and your propaganda, is afraid to stand up against you, and they privately enforce it with others through their own culture, unless they've been treated with antidepressants, in which case they render you powerless. View of self as hero in mass propaganda. You have created an outreach for yourself. Suicide. Not always from depression, this form of suicide. This is viewed as gallant, secretive, and tragic, with a hidden riddle always inserted by your friends and countrymen who have prior fled with a story or manuscript written. And then you're all the way homo. You've just died gay.